Let's bring in Jamil Jaffer on all of this, the founder and executive director of the National Security Institute at George Mason University. Welcome, Jamil. I think on the tablet here, I mentioned this earlier, the source of this is an Iranian official. They say the deal on the table was you can't have nukes, of course, but you have to get rid of stockpiles of enriched uranium, lower the uranium levels for civilian use, allow the inspectors to supervise, and then you'll have economic sanctions lifted. This makes sense to you, A? And then B, someone else brought up earlier, how's this any different than the Obama deal? So how do you see it?
Well, Connell, that's exactly the challenge. If the 5 items you just laid out from an Iranian official are the only items covered, it's virtually identical to the Obama nuclear deal. Now, there might be differences. There might be more or less centrifuges and the like. The uranium enrichment level, the quantities might be different. But at the end of the day, that fundamental formula, the idea that Iran is allowed to have a domestic enrichment program, was the problem with the Iran nuclear deal and might be the same problem the Trump administration is walking back into.
So right here on the screen, by the way, oil went down today. I think a lot of this was on, optimism that this would happen. There's the oil price and the decline about 2% in regular trading. So from your point of view, so the earlier conversation we were having on the show basically was saying, hey, this deal with the perspective was, I should say, this Obama deal was pretty good and we should have stuck with it. And now Trump's going back to it. What's your perspective? And if you don't think it was good, what should we add this time that wasn't on that list that I just showed?
Yeah, Connell, a number of things. I think the Iran nuclear deal was a terrible deal. I think there's a lot more we could have done. A few things. One, Iran should not need a domestic enrichment program. If they really want a civilian nuclear program, we've done this deal with a number of other countries where we give them enriched uranium at the levels appropriate for a civilian plant, and we actually give them technology and capability and the help to build a civilian capability. We did that with the Emirates, UAE. We've done it with a number of other countries. It's called the gold standard for a civilian nuclear program. So that's number one. Number two, the deal has to include restrictions on ballistic missiles, because it's not just the ability to get the critical material for a nuclear weapon, but it's the ability to deliver it as well. So ballistic missiles need to stop being developed in Iran. And then finally, and most important, the issue of Iran's support of terrorist proxy groups around the world. The Houthis, yes, but Hamas, Hezbollah, that has got to stop. And they've got to stop killing Americans and going after our friends in Israel and other allies around the globe. If they're not willing to do that, there's no deal to be had. President Trump was rightly critical of the Obama nuclear deal for those reasons. And yet, if his administration agrees to a deal that looks just like that one, that's going to be a real problem and won't be a good deal for the United States.
Okay, so right now we don't know what the terms are. We know what Iran is kind of saying the terms are. So that's the context for what you're about to hear for how President Trump says the negotiations are going. Here's how he put it earlier.
Iran has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace, and if we do that, it'll be fantastic.
On this, so they sort of agreed to the terms, and they're not going to make nuclear dust.
Well, it depends on what the president means by nuclear dust. If he means highly enriched uranium, that's a big deal, because that's a difference than what his negotiator, Steve Witkoff, said a few weeks ago, where he said, well, Iran will still be able to make this 3.67% highly enriched uranium. Now, the thing to know about highly enriched uranium is, yes, you need to get to 90% to be weapons grade, but most of the work that's done in enriched uranium happens at the lower level. So once you're at like 4 and then 10 and 20, that's the bulk of the work to get to 90, even though the numbers are a lot lower, the amount of effort you got to put in is a lot less to get from 20 to 90. And so the key thing here is they can't have that at all. So if they're now, if the Trump administration now saying they've agreed to not do that, that's a huge win, a big difference from the Obama deal, and that would be massive. We'll see if that's actually what's going on here. There have been mixed messages from this administration.
Right, if that is, quote unquote, nuclear dust. Okay, one other topic, as you know, the president's taking on a lot at once, especially overseas, whether it's, Iran, Ukraine, Putin, a no-show, but also Gaza. That's the other topic I want to ask you about, Jamil, before you go, and his comments today about Gaza. Here's what he said.
I think I'd be proud to have the United States have it, take it, make it a freedom zone, let some good things happen, put people in homes where they can be safe, and Hamas is going to have to be dealt with.
Gaza as a freedom zone. What do you say?
Yeah, look, I don't know what the president's talking about. I don't know what he means by the U.S. taking it, right? It's obviously that would be a big deal. The Israelis left Gaza in 2007, at great cost to themselves. They extracted all their people out, their settlements and the like. That was not a pleasant effort. The idea of the U.S. trying to take over that space, which is, filled with Hamas fighters, 2 million civilians, and then either, make it a freedom zone or take them out and move them somewhere else and put them in other houses, something the president's talked about. That would be an almost impossible task. And by the way, hugely destructive and may not be even lawful. And so the president, it all depends on what he means by freedom zone. It all means by what he means the U.S. should take it. I get that he has these visions, maybe. I mean, he's put a video on Twitter of, a Gaza with Trump towers. I mean,